Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. Good to be with you for another show on the next chapter with Charlie. As you know, doing the podcast is one of my favorite things. I love interviewing people, and today is going to be quite interesting. I want to explore the enchanting and ultra-frustrating world of dating. Now, if you are married and wonder, what does this have to do with you? Listen on. Our guest is an expert on relationships in general. Wendy, our guest, is well-researched expert on what women need to know about men in relationships. And I would say vice versa. I know it's focused largely on women, but there was plenty I learned as I read the book. My special guest today is Wendy Newman, who has been involved in the study of dating and relationships for a couple of decades now. She has written a really good book on the subject, and it's titled 121 First Dates. Yeah, yikes, yes. Wendy went on 120 dates before she found the man with whom she can share an awesome life. A bit about Wendy. She is a media celebrated author, speaker, and dating, sex, and relationship expert who's led hundreds of workshops and has helped over 50,000 women internationally. She helps women understand men, dating, sex, and partnerships of all kinds. Since 2002, Wendy has interviewed thousands of men on relationships, and we will talk about that, and on love, dating, sex, and the opposite sex. She's conducted polls, had one-on-one discussions, and hosted over 100 male speaker panels on these topics. Wendy is a compassionate fellow dater who navigated her way through 120 dates before meeting her partner, Dave, lucky number 121, and they now live together in San Francisco. Her book, 121 First Dates, is really fun and an ultra-informing read. I was very impressed. She calls it part juicy tell-all and part anti-rules dating guide. And it has been optioned for a Hollywood film, so that's quite exciting. Enough with the introduction. Let's get on to Wendy Newman and her expert insights into dating and what women and men need to know about each other before, during, and after dating. Wendy Newman, welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Charlie, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, it's a pleasure. The first thing I want to tell everybody, Wendy, is that your book, quite simply, as I told you this morning, is a very fine read. You are an excellent writer, and your content is so comprehensive that I just can't wait to chat about it. And I recommend, if this is a subject area that you're interested in, I can't think of a better resource. It's really good. I hate to say it, but I was surprised. 121st Dates. I did not expect a writer of this quality. So it's really a good book. I highly recommend it. Great job, Wendy.
Thank you so much.
So Wendy, tell me, really, 121 first dates. How long did it take to do that?
Well, it took a decade, but really the bulk of it happened in the final 3 years. The first date that I went on, date number 1, we both fell into, and we were just going to stay, even though we weren't a great match. And it's just something that people normally do, you know. It's not quite a right fit, but better than being single, and spent a couple of years with him knowing from day number 1 it was never going to work out. And then I did a repeat of that on date number 4. I just wasn't willing to put in the work to be single and sorting in a way for true compatibility. So it was just easier to fall in for a couple of years, even though I knew it was never going to work.
Did you have any kind of pre-imagined criteria on what a good match would be, or was this just sort of intuitive feelings, or were there actual things that you said, I'm just not going to be able to live with this?
Well, the 121 started at the age of 35. It didn't start at 18. It happened after a long-term marriage, ended. I married young and had a very typical ending. We grew apart as we got older. And since we had no children, there wasn't the need to stay. And so I knew what I didn't want when I walked away from that marriage, but I wasn't exactly sure what I did want. And within a pretty short amount of time, I had a really long laundry list of what I needed. I think it was about 4 pages, my list.
Oh, my goodness. Man. And did you have like a certain a threshold that they had to meet at least 60% or 70% to be considered for a next date?
Well, instead of going just on straight stats, I really did give everyone in front of me, one at a time, a chance to really see if there could be something between us. So sure, I had a list, but I wasn't going by it specifically.
Yeah, you weren't anal about it.
I had it to guide me, but I was willing to see who someone was and be surprised, be willing to be surprised. So
someone entering into this dating experience, it seems to me that perseverance must be a prerequisite in this meaningful endeavor.
Well, it's not for the meek, but it could really happen on the first date. It doesn't. I certainly would never want any person to have to do 121. I did it so people don't have to. They can learn from some of my blunders and mistakes. And I do think, though, what's very common is for someone to meet someone and see, there's some serious red flags here, but you know what? I'm so sick of being single. I don't want to date. I don't want that lady who went on 121 first dates. This one will do. He's pretty cute, or she's pretty cute. And that's not a great way.
Oh my goodness, no. You know, living together is quite a call in and of itself. On your website, you call your new book 121st Date, 121 Dates, an anti-rules book. Can you tell me what you mean by anti-rules?
Yeah, when I was dating, I did what any good dater would do. Some due diligence, some homework, grabbed a couple of dating books, and there were rules, and there were things to know, and there was strategies, and they weren't my strategies. They were the book writer's strategies. They were the author's strategies. And I tried to employ some of them along the way, the ones that, even if they didn't quite feel authentic to who I am and not quite right for me, maybe this would be the thing that would have it work. And that's what they do to sell the books, right? Let me give you a hook so you can try this out. I'll give you a gimmick or a rule or anything to just give a try. And when it doesn't work, we blame ourselves.
Yes. And you know, the 6 rules or the 10 keys or some silly title like that. It doesn't work.
I mean, they work for selling books, but they don't work in our lives. And one of my favorite questions that I get from all women who date is, when is the right time to get intimate for the first time so it turns into a relationship? And there are books that will tell you. Steve Harvey has a 90-day rule, right? And the rules have
to get intimate, you mean sex?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know what I could say on your show. So
you can say anything you want on my show. I don't care.
Keep it super clean for your audience. But yeah, for the first time to have sex, when does it turn into a real relationship? Like, men have an answer that they're just unwilling to give women, right? There's a right answer. You guys just won't give it to us. So we got to follow Steve Harvey's rule of 90 days and the book's rules of 3 dates, and there's got to be a right number. And what I really started to see was all of the rules completely don't work because they're not authentic to who we are. So I talk about things that I did wrong, things that I did right. I give guidelines to consider, and a lot of tools to make it easier. But the whole gimmicky rule thing, you got to figure out your own best practices because it's never going to work for you.
Boy, that's really a great approach. I think that's not only a good approach for dating, that's a good approach for a lot of self-help sort of design books. Instead of giving these are the key actions, we just sort of last week we did a show in which I said I'm done growing. I'm done with self-improvement. At 70 years old, I'm mature. My tree has grown, and so it was devoid of any. Here are the secrets to a meaningful life, as you go from what one writer called from old age to old age, and how do you live a meaningful life in old age before you hit old age, and I may be 70, but I feel a decade younger, and I still, nevertheless, am done with self-improvement. Although the weird thing is, Wendy, I still do self-improvement. It's just that I'm not focusing on it. It's not the go-to in my life.
Yeah.
Now, as I was reading your book, and I did read a bunch of your book. I have to admit, I didn't read all of it, but I read a bunch of it and was, sort of interestingly impressed that I really did like it. I enjoyed it. I thought your suggestions were very good. And what I noted in the first section of your book, Getting Ready to Date, to me is a very important section. And it seems, from my view, that it has to do with taking care of yourself, loving yourself, appreciating yourself, and I find this to be an often neglected piece in the puzzle of life in general. The old Socrates quote that the unexamined life is not worth living. How important is this self-examination in the dating process?
I think it's critical because you're not going to be able to be happy in a couple if you're not happy as a person. And a lot of people think, well, I'm single now and the circumstance makes it so I can't be happy. But I will be happy when I meet my love. No. You have to have a full life and an erect backbone and your own sense of self. I don't mean like independence, I don't need anybody, because partnership is about everybody having a part. But you have to be able to stand strong in the life that you have now and take really great nurturing care of yourself so you can be at top form when you meet people.
That's really not I think that's I just made fun of secrets, but I think that's a secret. I think not a lot of people are really aware of that. Are you the kind of person somebody might like to date? Are you confident? Do you appreciate yourself? Do you take care of yourself? Can you live alone? Are you fine going out to dinner by yourself, or me going to dinner by myself, going to movies by myself, and always quite comfortable in doing that, just quite comfortable in my own skin. I think that was the words that you used at one point in your book. I see that your advice was really helpful to your readers.
Yeah, and I really love alone time. I love my own company, so going to movies and dinner by myself is no big deal, and I love it. I think there are some people who are never going to be comfortable with that. So if you're listening and you're the type of person that thinks you're never going to be comfortable with that, what I am talking about is creating your inner circle of friends that you dine out with, that you go to movies with, that you enjoy all of the parts of life that is single life, even if you're doing it with other people. I had a next-door neighbor, lovely woman about my age, and I said, hey, let's go try that new place down the street on Friday night. And she said, oh, I don't go out to eat unless it's a date. It's like, you don't go, you only treat yourself. You only have gourmet food when a date is happening. How sad is that? That your life is limited by your circumstance.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's too bad. And another thing you write about in there, and that's a very important suggestion that I offer my audience quite a bit, is to pamper yourself. Mm-hmm. Is to take care of yourself. You know, I'm a clothes fanatic. I buy clothes. I get my nails done. I get my hair cut. You know, I love doing those things, and those are, you know, I'm married, but my wife and I have quite a bit of time alone. She works quite a bit, and I am volunteering for organizations that keep me very busy. So those are things, the way that I pamper myself, and I feel good. It helps build my confidence in myself.
Mm-hmm. And there are things that I loved that usually come from another person that I just started providing for myself. Like, I really love flowers, and I go buy flowers for myself every week. And I did that my whole single life there for a decade. And then when I met Dave and we ended up moving in and getting married, I still buy flowers every week. So it's not something that I forced on him or made him do. It would have been something originally about a decade and a half ago, that I would have liked a man to provide, but when I got used to providing it on my own, they're just as beautiful. They're just as great. So,
yeah, it's funny. I know a woman this is a couple of decades ago, that was single, and she's my age, and she's still single and sort of accepted that fact. But she started 20 or 30 years ago. You know, you have this china chest that has the silverware and the plates and all of this magnificent, you know, cutlery and everything that would go with the fine dinner that you're supposed to save for special occasions. Mm-hmm. She said, screw that. That's what she eats off of regular plates.
That's great.
You know, is eating off of fine china. So I think it's about time we get into the dating process. And one thing, no, that'd be a while. I'm talking to my producer here. In the dating process, what would you consider a successful first date?
If you show up, you're on time, you present yourself as yourself. One of the things we want to do is pretend we're somebody else so they'll like us better. If you can show up as you did great. Whether you were a yes or a no to that person, you did your very best. You showed up as you showed up on time, and open-hearted to get to know a new person. That is a very successful date.
But there is obviously some sort of communication and some sort of connection, is it, or would there not have to be a connection at all? I mean, even, you know, not a romantic connection, but a human connection.
Well, sometimes it's not your part to do the human connection if you're in front of somebody who's not open to that. But are you going to walk away from this date saying, oh, this person, they didn't talk the whole time, and I had to do heavy lifting, I did both sides of the conversation, and that was a terrible date? Well, you can do that. You can say that. Probably will say that. I said that. But then when you look at the grand scheme of things, how did I do? What was my part of this date? Did I have a successful date? Did I show up and make this happen? I did my best. Good enough. Next, to move on. Talk about next. You know, you had some stats on page 111. Oh, no. I don't remember them. Give me my stats.
Here's your stats. Okay, of your 121 dates, 84 were one date only, 16 led to 2 dates, and then 21 led to more than 2 dates. So I did my quick math, and the chances of moving on to a second date is about 30%.
Not bad.
That's really, you know, I don't think that's bad. I don't think that's a bad number at all. Tell me, can you have an enjoyable first date that does not lead to a second date, but you had a fine time on the first date?
Absolutely. I have a date in there, date number 66, I think. He was a felon. He had spent the reason he was 48 and never married is because he spent most of his life at San Quentin. I was never going to go on another date with that man again.
What was he in for? Do you remember?
All kinds of things. Yeah, he was in.
If you're in San Quentin, you're in for some pretty serious stuff.
Some serious grand theft stuff. He was in for drug use and what the drugs he was taking called him to do. He was in for some real exciting stuff. Carried a hammer in his back pocket for a while because the voices told him to. He carried this on his first date.
But it was still a good date.
Look, he offered to go hiking with me, which how stupid am I to say yes to hiking? But I lived in a little town called Mill Valley, California, and that's all you do there. So it's like breathing water. That's what we do. We hike at every size, every age. You hike there. So when we said hiking, I said yes. And when I got to the date, he was very handsome, tall, handsome, put together, and my gut went, nope. And I thought, oh, shoot, what am I going to do? We're going hiking up Mount Tamalpais. And we were meeting at a coffee shop in the little urban hamlet there, or little hamlet of a town. And I said, hey, so nice to meet you. I'm Wendy Newman. And I think that the back of my shoe is coming apart. The glue's coming out. So can we just take a walk around the neighborhood instead of...
Oh, that's slick.
Roads. So we hiked in the urban areas, and he's telling me all the story. I was so fascinated when he said, do you want to go to dinner? I said yes, because I wanted to hear the whole story.
How
fun. I paid for my half, because that would be rude. And first date, never saw him again.
Okay, so tell me then, based, just kind of coming off of that, what would you consider some criteria that need to be met in order for date 1 to move to date 2?
Do I like him? Not just do I think he's sexy or cute or charming, but do I like him? Do I respect him? Do I respect what he's up to in life? Can the very brief encounter that we're having on first date, can I see any level of integrity? And if I can, what am I noticing? And is it easy for him to see me? So is the conversation easy breezy, flowy? Is it hard to have him see my point of view? Am I having to fight for it? Or is our conversation just like, oh, yeah, I get it? If it's hard and it's really hard to be understood by him and we have very different point of view, I'm not going to do it. Right.
So it's really almost an intuitive sort of feeling. There's certainly checklist items, but your intuition is informing you. Your unconscious is informing you of yeah, this is going to work or this isn't going to work.
And then there are circumstances. I took 5 of my dates from one of those big national companies. I won't say their name. Terrible companies. They set you up for lunch. And I went on this date, and I told them my stats. I didn't want anything too specific, but one of the things that I did want was someone without small children at home. Because at that stage, I was about 43. And
who wants to do that? Are you kidding?
Well, at 43, if I don't have them, I'm thinking I'm probably not going to be wanting them.
Right.
And they set me up the best date of the 5 that I paid a lot of money for. The best date of all had 6 children under the age of 18 at home. And we had a great first date, and he was a really good man, but no way.
Yeah, but he's a really good man with somebody else.
Yeah. Really loves children.
I have one more question before we take a brief break halfway through the show, and now it's a little more than halfway. But when we had chatted on the phone, you said one of the most common questions you were asked is, what are the most common mistakes that women and men make on their first date? And the kind of mistakes that will most likely ensure there will be no second date. What are some of those mistakes?
One of them happens online before you ever meet, and it also carries through the first date, is women will package themselves as a wife or a partner. And so we'll roll out how amazing we are and how we're looking to be married tomorrow, and that we cook and we do this and we do that and we're nurturing and we're fabulous, and we package ourselves like a wife. And what I understand from men and the interviews that I've done is they understand, especially with online dating, they just want to know if you're an interesting person and they can spend 10 minutes with you in a coffee shop. So they're taking dating like a baby step. So women will think men are being shallow, and men will think women are coming on way too strong.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
Women will think men are too shallow. I'm thinking the opposite. If I were in this situation, I'd be talking about intellectual stuff too soon. You know, it just my brain goes there.
I have a friend that likes to talk about a prenup on a first date. He likes to see a person's sense of fairness. Too soon on a first date is like talking about having a relationship on a first date.
Yeah.
So it can show bad judgment to roll out your hopes and dreams to the 25 million people on that dating site.
25 million people on the dating site? See, I'm unfamiliar with all of this.
Oh, yeah, there's 25 million is a pretty average number for dating sites. 25
million?
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow. Well, no wonder you can have 121 dates.
I did drain the Match.com pool, though.
I know. I read that you wrote about that. I'm thinking, holy cow. Well, at least you know what you want. So that's clear. That's great. We're going to take a break, and I want to come back and talk about two important subjects in your book, and that's online dating. I want to spend some time on online dating, and I also want to spend some time that you cover. You say what women need to know about men. I think as well there are things that men need to know about women, especially in this what we're calling the post-Me Too generation. Mm-hmm. Everybody seems to be sort of confused, so we're going to head that direction after the break. Hi, this is Charlie Hedges, and you're listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie, and my special guest is Wendy Newman, author of an excellent book titled 121 First Dates, and we're talking about the dating process and eventually one that would lead to a longer-term relationship. Now, let's hope you don't all have to go through Wendy's experience of 120 dates before the 121st successful, well, the one that turned out successful. I'm sorry, I just lost myself in my notes. There I go. Okay, so what I want to talk about on this is I want to talk about online dating, and I want to talk about gender, understanding genders. But let's start with online dating. I've spoken with so many people that seem to have such a negative opinion about online dating, except for the ones that I know that have found spouses from it. There's, obviously a dissatisfaction. And yet you are a strong advocate of online dating. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, well, I actually want to address what you said, because I was once asked by a reporter, what's the deal with online dating? Because some people have nothing but nightmare stories, and other people have glorious marriages and success stories. What's the difference? And the answer is really easy. The ones who got married and have glorious stories, they kept going. But they have nightmare stories too. And the good thing about life after a nightmare story is you never have to live that one again. You might have a different nightmare story later, but the one you just had is in the past. And there's a lot of yucky parts that come in the package of online dating. Just a ton of them. I don't even need to name them. Everybody knows what's negative about online dating, from ghosting and not real people and all the things, right?
I'm not everybody, so you're going to have to explain some things.
Give you the long list.
I'm totally unfamiliar. So give me two or three.
The biggest two are people can have the experience of, there's someone better on the corner. I don't need to get to know this one. I got 25 million people at my disposal, so I'm going to just breeze through this coffee date and move right on because they're not perfect.
Oh.
I actually was really conscious to not do that, to pay attention to who is in front of me and look at, is this a good match for me, instead of who do I have on the books next Friday.
Did you sort of have, I think maybe we discussed it, but I want to bring it up again at this point. Did you have some form of criteria that you would, a list of this is what you want? I know you talked about what you need and what makes you happy.
Yes.
That you talked about that in the book.
Yes.
See, I read the book.
You did. You did.
So do you have that sort of list running through the back of your mind all the time, or is it just an intuitive?
It's an intuitive, like knowing myself. The thing that I did was the exercise of really sitting down and looking at, what do I need? What things in life are important to me, and what are the bonuses? What are going to make me happy, and it'd be great if I got them. And to sit down and write a 4-page list, 12-point font, single-spaced.
That's sort of overkill, isn't it?
I didn't feel like it was, because it was really a great navel-gazing moment of self-realization of what was important to me. And then when I went out on dates, I didn't focus on that list. That list was in a file drawer collecting dust.
Right.
And when I finally met Dave, someone asked me, they said, hey, I know you made a list. Does he have everything on the list? And I went, oh, that's right, I have a list. And it had been 3 or 4 months we'd been together, and I went to the file drawer, and I pulled out the list, and I looked through the list. He had everything on the list.
Oh, really?
Everything.
Oh, well, that's a pretty good sign.
I know. But one of the tricky parts, though, is when I was very thorough about making that list, I made sure there wasn't anything on the list that canceled out something else on the list. So I wasn't asking for a guy who could kill it at work and make vice president and be just amazing out in the world, and someone who would pay all the attention to me and the family we were making. That's two separate men. And that's the problem that a lot of people run into, is they'll make a list of what they want, but things they put on that list will cancel out other things on the list. Like you can't get them in one person. So my list, while very long, and while I could have done without many things on it, nothing canceled anything out. And in fact, it was pretty synergistic.
And that really, that's part of that. That's part of that. What we talked about, the pre-dating ritual that you would go through, and that would seem to be a pre-dating ritual or pre-dating experience of. And I like your what do you need and what makes you happy. I think those are, those are two very good questions, and it doesn't have to get a whole lot more complicated than that. At the high level, at the most meaningful level, what do I need? Do I get are a good majority of my needs met by this person? And what makes me happy? And am I happy with? Does this person make me happy? And maybe commonality, enjoy the same kinds of things that I enjoy, and that we can share them as partners.
And you can definitely have that minimum standard where you're asking yourself, would I rather be without this quality and be alone than not have, either have the quality with the person. If you don't find the person that has that quality, would you rather be alone? Is there any wiggle room, right?
Wendy, I'm an introvert, although no one but me and my close friends and my wife are familiar with it because I do well publicly, but it's my battery, the stimulation, my battery is being drained, and I have to be alone. So how does that for the introvert, the shyer person, how does that work in this dating process?
Introverts should definitely date from the internet because online dating is going to be much easier for an introvert to wrap their head around getting to know somebody and making contact, that first contact, in the privacy of your own home. And if you're introverted, going out to a noisy club or a bar or a restaurant in the lounge to meet somebody and try and get to know them, it's going to be really daunting.
Yes.
And when it comes to dating somebody around alone time and needing that time to recharge, I think a lot of people, especially, I'd say people over 40, we all really appreciate that. We all really appreciate alone time, and we understand that we need it, where at 20 we didn't necessarily know. And we also didn't necessarily need it.
And didn't need it. No.
So I think that's more widely accepted, and there's consideration for it in midlife and beyond.
Tell me, changing just a bit back on online dating, tell me, how can I determine what is a good online dating service?
Well, my recommendation for anybody is if they're in a very small town or an area with limited people, they just need to go with the big boy. They need to go with the ones with the most people.
Yeah, go ahead and say on the show, because, who are the big boys? I don't even know who the big boys are.
Like a Match.com or a Tinder or an OkCupid, if you like that flavor in your town. And so you'd want to go with the flavor of one of the big ones that you like. Honestly, I laughed because they're all the same in terms of how they function and algorithms, and the features are mostly all the same. There's one that I don't like, and that would be eHarmony. And I have nothing against the company. I think the company's probably lovely, but they've structured all of their marketing around compatibility, and they have set it up so you have to jump through just a ton of hoops to get to the person, and by then it's not even a good match for you. So you'll burn out before you ever meet anybody, or that you meet a couple of people or several.
Oh, because you're doing so much pre-testing and writing about yourself, and how difficult that must be, just writing a self-description, that doesn't say I like walking on the beach.
Right. Right. And one would think if you want something serious, you should never do Tinder, but actually Tinder's great. And I know a lot of people who are getting married on Tinder. And the two things I like about Tinder is it was designed for a man's brain. So there's a lot of men on that site.
So it's good so it's a woman's site then.
Yeah, and then what I like about it is you can't write that much. So you can't try and pre-vet someone in a way that you would rule them out over something stupid that would be completely not important to you if you actually were face-to-face. Tinder gets you off the couch and gets you into that coffee shop or wine bar to see what's going on between the two of you. And I do recommend that people meet quickly and not try and vet each other back and forth, because you're not getting the real...
Oh, so not too many emails or texts or whatever.
Nope.
Because that, I can see that, because it's, I think you write in the book about people who first dated by dozens of emails and then met each other. And I think you even talked of one that had decided to get married, and they had never met.
Yes. She traveled all the way across the world.
And didn't she sell like everything? And
everything. Sold her whole life, sold everything, moved literally halfway around the world. Didn't work out.
Yeah, that's that forms sort of forms a desperation feel to it.
She's a lovely woman who was unwilling to date. When we were talking, I know her personally, and she said, you know, even when you hit 30, Wendy, I just can't even imagine. I'm just unwilling. Okay, well, you could just pick the next cute one and see what happens.
You know, how much of the first date, second date, third date, if you get to that point, how much of it has to do with expectations? If you were looking for a life partner on those early dating experiences, you're putting a lot of pressure on that event. But if you're looking simply to have an enjoyable encounter, get along with the person and enjoy your time together, it seems to me that your chances of a good first date are far better. You have a far better chance of success than if you're looking for the man or woman of your dreams.
Do you know who would say something like that?
A man.
A married person. I was always looking for my partner, always, but I just
really
kept it in my head, inside, and not out of my mouth. I kept it in here instead of out there.
So I did my best
that
is going on.
Fake it. Fake it with having a casual, friendly coffee. Hi, how you doing? All chill. But no, I was always looking for my partner. I never wanted to date to meet new friends. I have plenty of friends.
Oh, that makes sense. That's good. So finally, as we're nearing our time, or as my producer is pointing at me, we've passed our time, but oh well, I can put up with his stuff. I want to talk. I think this is really important that you brought this up this morning as you and I chatted about misunderstood gender expectations in this post-Me Too movement. And you pointed out that men are afraid of acting, my language, politically incorrect, by being strong or opening doors or maybe even paying for the date. I understand that payments are split, which doesn't fit in my world. And all the stuff that I was raised with. What does a man need to know now post-Me Too and the stronger woman persona that's out there?
I was just having lunch with a friend today, and he was telling me that the art of flirting is now lost because of this. There used to be a time where you could look at a woman from across the room and open the door and smile or say, hey. And there's just not that ability to do that without a rant or an upset or the possibility of not just rejection, but getting slammed for being a creepy guy.
Really? Being a creepy guy for opening a door?
If there's any move made around the smile, the wink, the hi, how you doing, what's your name, or any sort of old school flirting is now off the table.
So what is on the table?
Well, online dating is on the table because there's never been a time in history where it's been more impossible to meet somebody in the real world. And the only way it's going to happen, well, it'll happen in two cases. One, a player who's really good at it, right?
Right.
He's not going to get stopped by this. But a nice, decent guy out in the world, if he's looking at a woman and she's looking at him and smiling, he's still going to wonder, am I making her nervous if she smiles? Because I just learned that sometimes women smile when they're nervous and maybe she just wants me to go away. A woman's going to have to walk up to him. We're going to have to give such a big green light, the "you will not be in trouble with me if you talk to me" light.
It makes it very difficult for men. Does make that difficult for men.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I could see myself if something were to happen to my wife and I was single, I could see myself, because I am certainly a feminist, and I want to be very considerate of what women are thinking, and yet at the same time, I'm a strong man. Yet I happen to be fortunate, and I'm married to a strong woman, and so we actually get along. We complement our strengths and what our strong suits are, and we are very keenly aware of where we are stronger and where we are weaker. But I have a very strong feminine side, yet I'm a guy.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
The thing that women need to understand that men know women don't is that he's acutely aware that the only difference that makes him a creepy guy is he your type? And he doesn't know you, so he doesn't know.
So how does he know?
He's not going to risk it.
Yeah.
He's not going to risk it.
And so they're just going to talk about pablum?
They're probably not even going to talk. He's not going to approach her. Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm.
Oh, so once again, that's why you advocate online dating, so you can get that sort of out of the way.
Yes, the problem with online dating is people don't necessarily tell the truth. Sometimes they're not who they say they are. Sometimes they just disappear. But the plus side is you're going to meet people that you would never have access to in the real world, and you're going to have opportunity to talk and connect with people that you're not going to have access to anymore because people don't talk to each other out in the world.
That's great. Tell me, I'm curious about just an off-the-wall fact. How many people look like their photos?
Well, that's really interesting. What I found is men do a really, really bad job with their photos, which is fantastic for someone who's an experienced dater like I was. I never wanted to be an experienced dater. I was one. But what I learned...
Well, after 100 dates,
I did not mean to be a serial dater. I hate that label. Anyway, so what I learned is if I really liked what he wrote, and as a writer, I like a writer, right? So if he was a good writer and I liked what he wrote and I could respect who he was and the pictures weren't so great, I would go. And almost every time, he was much more handsome in real life. And I was really delighted because all the other women were passing him by, so I had a better chance.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. Now, before we close up, because we are entering our time zone, but I do have one final question, and it's something that my producer Paul asked me as I came into the room and asked me if we were going to talk about, because as Paul and I enter, the fall season of our lives, there are plenty of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s looking for companionships and could even be looking for another marriage. What do you suggest for these people? I mean, they don't even know how to use computers, Wendy.
Match.com.
Match.com?
Ourtime.com. Another thing, if you want to do real world stuff, is go to a dance studio where there are group dances and like a lesson, and you show up alone and happy and willing to dance with everybody.
Oh. So you do your group activities sort of strategically.
Mhm. If one goes to, say, a nonprofit gala or an art opening, or let's say the opening of the opera, you're going to see a lot of single women, very few single men who are straight. So the things that we like to dress up for and gala out to with a nice glass of champagne, it's not going to be a winner. Go to Home Depot.
You just brought up in my mind a second question. Sorry, Paul. What about somebody like me that's alcoholic? How difficult is it to first date if you're not a drinker?
Well, with online, they have the filters. So one of the questions is, doesn't drink at all? And I would just use the filter, doesn't drink at all, and then people can assume, and we do in or out based on that.
Yeah, I don't mind being around people that drink. Yeah, I don't have, I could be with the friendship meeting that I'm having tonight. I will buy the woman wine. It doesn't, that doesn't bother me at all, but I won't have any.
Someone that I dated only used the filter and didn't state, I am an alcoholic, and go to AA. He didn't spell it out. He just used the filter. And then when I met him on our first date, he said, just so you know, I don't drink at all. I've been sober for 25 years. I thought you should know. Cool. All right. Excellent. Thanks.
And it wasn't a big negative.
Oh, no, not at all. I have about 4 drinks a year, so that was not a big deal to me.
So that doesn't sound like a 121 dater person that has 4 drinks a year.
Well, during my dating process, actually, I did have quite a few more because I was younger back then. But somewhere in the early 40s, my body went, mm-mm.
Yeah. Well, Wendy Newman, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I want to tell everybody, for more information on Wendy, please visit her website at Wendy Speaks at AOL. No, at AOL. No, at Wendy. I just wrote it down wrong, Wendy, so you're going to have to tell me.
It's at wendyspeaks.com.
That's what I thought, wendyspeaks.com. And it will be in the show notes. And Wendy's website is full of dating and relationship resources. I really highly recommend the website. I highly recommend the book. This is not the book that I would, as a married guy, I would normally read. And yet I found it thoroughly, not only enjoyable because you're such a good writer, but very informative and very well organized and put together. I was very impressed with your book, Wendy, and I encourage.
I think that you and your wife should read all 28 short stories out loud to each other, and every night you could kiss each other and just be so grateful you never had to go through any of that experience.
Oh, gee, would you do me a favor? We're gonna hang up, but just hang on don't hang up. Hang on so we can chat just a bit. And I want to, before we end, I want to thank all our listeners for tuning in to The Next Chapter with Charlie, and be sure to check us out at our website, thenextchapter.life. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.